Hello, and welcome to Guitars and Gadgets. Today we're going to talk about crate amplifiers, because crate is great, right? Hey, welcome to Guitars and Gadgets. Hey, today we're going to talk about crate amplifiers. I've got an old VC-508 crate here from the 90s. This was a pawn shop find for me, which was really a great deal. It did have ended up having a blown preamp tube in it that I had to replace. It was kind of squealing like a pig after it warmed up for about 15 minutes. But it sounds pretty decent now. I may do some mods to it later. Anyways, if you've been playing guitar for any length of time at all, I'm sure at some point in your life you have owned a crate amplifier. I mean, back in the 80s, early 90s, even in the early 80s when they first come out, they were pretty much, you know, the amp to go with for that style of music that was being played, and they were affordable amplifiers. You didn't have to spend $1,000 on a tube amp or something. You could buy one of those to practice with. This is actually a tube amp. It's a VC-508, which stands for Vintage Club. The 508 means 5 watts tube power, 8-inch Celestion speaker, and it's one of the better sounding little practice amps I've ever had. It's got great tone. You can turn it up and get that tube tone out of it without blowing the walls down in the house. Some of the other crates I'd like to mention, I remember the very first ones that come out were actually the outside of it was built and it looked like a crate. It was made out of crate material. They used the wood from crates to build the box for the amp, and then they came out with a later version where they made it look a little better, and that was the first crate I ever had. I think it was like a 1979 or something like that, and I want to say it was 20 watts. You know, and it didn't sound too bad. It actually sounded like one of the old Peavies, like Leonard Skinner used, like one of the old Peavey Maces or something, but in a small package. You know, it had that kind of tone, but it wasn't a tube amp, so it didn't have that quality that a tube amp gives you, but it was still a cool amp for the money. Crate did put out a lot of amps that a lot of people definitely do not like today. There's a lot of history behind Crate. You know, if you do your research, Google it, you know, you'll find out that the company that actually started Crate was the St. Louis Music Company, which, you know, they didn't just make and sell instruments and stuff. They carried instruments for other companies like Zildjian cymbals, things like that. Also, a lot of people don't know nowadays, if you've heard of Blackheart amps, that is actually Crate. Crate introduced the Blackheart line of amplifiers, and a lot of people don't know that. Crate is no longer in business now, but they kind of still are with producing the Blackheart amplifiers. Anyways, let's give this little baby a try here. I'm going to grab a guitar, and we'll be right back and see what this thing sounds like. Okay, before we do anything else, let me explain what this amplifier has. Like I said, it's 5 watts, all tube. It's got one 12AX7 preamp tube and one EL84 power tube, and it's 5 watts through an 8-inch Celestion speaker. It has a volume knob, which is your main volume. It has a gain control, so you can get pretty saturated if you want, and it has a tone control. And the tone control, I pretty much don't use, I leave it off. The natural sound of the amp sounds good to me. When you turn it, when you start turning it up, I leave it on 0. When you start turning it up, it adds a lot of treble. I'll let you hear for yourself. It's really trebly at 12 o'clock position. And then as you move it on up, it starts mudding up like that old crate tone, you know, the old muffly crate tone that they always produced for that heavy metal sound. Yeah, that's that old crate. You can just hear that old crate tone in it. But it doesn't sound bad for classic rock if you turn the gain down a little bit. By the way, this amp doesn't clean up very well. It's not a very good amp to use pedals on because it doesn't play real clean. It starts breaking up as you turn it up. But you can get sort of an AC/DC tone out of it. Great little amp for a practice amp, you know. I haven't recorded with it yet, but I'm looking forward to doing so. So right now, I'm going to kick on some background music, and let's see what it sounds like to play along with it as soon as my stereo kicks on.
Oxen.
I don't know how EQ'd I'll be here, but we'll experiment and see. But there you go. That's the Crate VC-508 little tube practice amp. I think I'd pretty much take it as a practice amp over anything on the market today. I mean, for the money anyways. You know, Blackstar makes a great little 5 watt, actually a 1 watt practice amp. That's phenomenal, but it ain't cheap. It's very, very close and similar to this. Anyways, that wraps it up for today. Thanks for hanging out, and please don't forget to subscribe if you like what you see.